Hey guys, this is the Ganzo FirebirdGanzo 727S. I got this knife about, 3-4 hours ago. It was through a friend of mine. He included this knife with his order, and I didn't really have the time to look at it. Now, some people ask me, do I still use Ganzos? Yes, I still use Ganzos. In cut tests, sometimes as working knives. This, for example, is one I really like to use, the 733 model. This is the Spyderco stretch design copy. This has been reground. It has a very, very thin grind, about 14 degrees per side cutting edge angle, and just it plows through stuff. I mean, without any effort. This is willow. It's not the hardest of wood, but it's really, really easy to just control with it. Compare this to a normal grind, 17 degrees per side. You can see the difference. This curly piece of wood is bent much more, and this is the one I cut with the thinned out grind. So yeah, I like to work with them. I like to use them as test knives. I still use Ganzo knives, not as often as I did, but I still think they're very, very impressive. Now, this is the 727S. It's the design copy of the Rat 2 model. Now, I've had the 727, which is the design copy of the Rat 1 model. The Rat 1, by the way, is my first YouTube-inspired purchase. I think it was because of Steve's channel, A Blunt Truth For You. You can still find his videos online, that I decided to get this knife. He had a review of it, tests, and it was a good decision. This is one of the most comfortable folders, maybe not ever, but within that time, yeah, definitely. Very comfortable in hand. Now, the only downside to this is the steel, AUS 8. It's a bit soft. This knife has been convexed, ground thinner. It lost about 2-3 millimeters from the tip, but a lot of my friends had this knife with them, worked with it, took it out in nature. A friend of mine took it hunting. So this knife has seen a lot. I think I bought it back in 2009, and it's still a great knife, but the steel is a bit soft. Now, there's nothing wrong with softer steels. That just means that you're going to have less trouble sharpening them. And once you get your sharpening techniques down, a couple of passes on a stone, it's going to be enough. Or even better, you might be able to keep it sharp just by stropping it. Now, there's a lot to say about this knife. I'm not going to get into it. But the 727, the design copy of the Rat 1, was not as well made as other design copies. For example, this is the G720. This is a design copy from the Lion Steel SR1. And I think this model is better made as a heavy-duty working knife. Some people don't like the axis lock because the steel, the springs can break. Personally, this knife taught me that axis locks are pretty resilient. I've abused this knife a lot. Very, very heavy abuse. You can watch my videos. And to this day, it still works. It still locks up. And it has this forward-backward blade play, but you can see it doesn't unlock. Now, spine wax test, I don't do those. But I still work with this knife. I still trust it. Now, would I trust it the same to, for example, chop with it, which is something that I did? I would be very wary of that. But if any other locking mechanism, including the triad lock or just a simple back lock, you would take this and abuse it as much as I have abused this knife. By the time it got to this amount of damage, the lock wouldn't work. This is why I like axis locks. But yeah, for safety, I do prefer Cold Steel's triad lock. But axis locks, they're nice, they're fidgety. And yeah, sure, I never had Omega springs break on me. Some people had. So some of their design copies have been improved. For example, the 729 is more comfortable than the Para 2. Is it the same experience? By far not. Is it a good working knife? Yes. That's all I have to say on this matter. I did, a couple of months ago, have the opportunity to hold a Rat 2 model in my hand. It was a carbon fiber handled version. It didn't feel quite as good. I just picked it up and I said, it feels odd. what I liked about it was the oversized screws, because they basically held the same size screws like on the Rat 1, and that I liked. But for some reason, it just didn't feel very secure in hand or very comfortable. And I'm thinking it was the carbon fiber handle scales. Now, after I got this knife, the first thing that popped into my head was I got to get myself a Rat 2 in D2. I want to try their Ontario's heat-treated D2, and I want to see if the G10 handle scales will feel much better. Now, these are, as far as I remember, is not G10 but Zytel. I've had no issues with them, but this has a very good texture to it, and I was pretty amazed at how comfortable it feels in hand. Now, I opened it and I cut a few pieces in my heart. I didn't actually cut one, went straight through this part, but I tried to get a very deep bite and just push and push and see if it would bother me as much as others. When you have a small knife like this, you see, when you have this is very comfortable. This is a very secure grip. It's a big knife. It's a secure grip. You can do a lot. You can put a lot of force behind this cut. And there's enough thickness here, enough area of your hand that's covering the knife so that it's more comfortable. Yeah. And if you put more pressure into it, you will start feeling where is it uncomfortable. And you do this for 5 minutes, just cut hard cardboard or harder woods, and you will feel how comfortable or not comfortable a knife is, or where the hot spots are. Now, the pocket clip is usually a hot spot. This is a small knife. For some reason, in my hand, it just fits very well. And I did this until I went through that big piece of wood. And yeah, oh, there you go. Yeah, this is one. And I did this, and it's not as bad as I would have thought. I mean, this is a small knife. Ganzo makes other smaller knives to their models. For example, this is the FH11. This is the FH11S, smaller model for this. They're both reground. And now this one has a very thin grind. For their heat-treated D2, this is very good. It holds an edge and it doesn't warp. Unlike this one, this osate is very soft. And now there are advantages and disadvantages to everyone, but let's talk about this one. So it feels very comfortable, and the pocket clip is not really a hot spot. There are other knives where the pocket clip can be a very negative hot spot. For example, this one, for some reason, not very comfortable despite it go tenacious. And I've always had a bad relationship with the tenacious, but that doesn't mean I didn't give it enough chances. I did. For my hand, it just doesn't work, and there are other things. Now, the 727S, the design copy of the Rat 2, I got it for about half the price of a Rat 2. This is a very good deal in my opinion. And if you, and most people don't need anything bigger for their everyday carry purposes, if you like to get this, yeah, it's a good deal. I mean, it has these drilled out liners, not nested, they're drilled out for weight reduction. Hoping you can see it. Access lock, which moves very well. I mean, it may be a bit stiff, but I have no issues. They rounded off these the barrel of the access lock, and it feels very good. Now, I think they call it a G-lock nowadays. I don't care about those terms. But what was even more impressive to me was the fact that I don't have side-to-side blade play. This is something that I hate having, side-to-side blade play. For example, this is the tenacious. This one right now has a bit of side-to-side movement. I wouldn't really call it blade play, but I cannot flick it open unless I flick my whole wrist because it's so tight. The minute I loosen it up, I get side-to-side blade play, and then maybe I get a better action. Now, the initial G10 tenacious didn't have that, but this is just poorly made, and I wondered why. I haven't watched any videos on this. I just knew there was this smaller version of the 727, and I looked using a flashlight inside here, And I think it has washers, you're not going to see it, washers which are on ball bearings. So that's why it's so smooth and has no blade play. Some people don't like that. Me personally, I like it. It's the case for this knife, and it's very, very smooth. Now, I have not cleaned this for about a year, and then I noticed it became dragging a bit. It was still open and closed very well, but then I cleaned it, and now it's just very, very smooth. So I personally have no issues with I'm not thinking this is $15-20 knife. I don't have the same expectations that I would have for $100 knife. I think the grind is symmetrical, which is something you sometimes don't see in $150-200 knives, a symmetrical grind. If it's not, if it turns out it's not, it's thicker on one side than on the other, it's a $15-20 knife. Well, you know, like I said, some people ask me, do I still use Ganzos? And yes, I still use Ganzos, but there are not so many models that interest me nowadays. But this one was always on my wish list. I just didn't want to go through the hassle of, ordering it. When it comes to small knives, I think you have a small handle, which is probably not going to be as comfortable in hand. That's where you need a thin grind and a small edge angle. That's where this knife doesn't hold up very well. But like I said, keep in mind, $20 knife. The edge angle is kind of steep. I looked at it, I didn't measure it, didn't calculate it, but it's kind of steep. It's somewhere around 30, maybe 35 degrees per side, but at least it seems to be symmetrical. So a very, very steep edge angle. Compare this to my large edge angle knife. This is 20 degrees per side. Hope you can see it on camera. I mean, this is much smaller and it's a larger knife, so it's going to be more comfortable because of the handle, and you're going to have to put less force behind the cut because, once again, edge angle. I think people should really think about this. And Spyderco made the Chaparral, and this, in my opinion, is, when it comes to EDC knives, this is perfect. I mean, you don't need something bigger than this. It's slim, it's lightweight, and this is the lightweight version. Has a very thin stock, has a thin grind, and the edge angle for this one is actually 17 degrees per side, which Spyderco advocates that all their knives are sharpened at 17 degrees per side, so you can use them with a triangle sharp maker, but they're not. Most of them are over 20 degrees. This one actually has about a 17 degree per side edge angle. It has a very thin grind, I don't know if you can see it, and a thin stock. And in hand, it's fairly comfortable for the size that it is. And I don't feel the blade pushing on the back lock like I do with my Endura. When cutting, I've showed this. You know, you push on the blade and then the blade pushes on the back lock and you feel that move in your hand. I don't get that with this because it's just so small, so thin, and choking up on it, I feel very safe with it, and I can put a lot of force behind the cut. And you can see how it goes in. Look, I mean, it's a thin, this is one of, I think, the best EDC pocket knives you can probably get from Spyderco. I'm amazed by this model. And you know what? This is still the factory grind. This one came sharper than most Spydercos. And I have actually refrained from sharpening it because I want to just drop it back to where it's cutting. Right now, still slicing paper cleanly. I've had this knife for, I don't know, maybe 6 months, and I've just dropped it. CTS XHP, and their CTS XHP is, I think, in my opinion, better heat treated than cold steels, or maybe it's not. The grinding differs or whatever, but this is what a small knife should be, and this is much more comfortable in hand. It has a relative thick grind, has a relative large edge angle, but you can correct that. And for $15-20, no side to side, good action, centered if you care about that. I don't care about that much. It's nice to see it, but I don't care about it. And yeah, pocket clip, not impressive. I would always like to see a deep carry pocket clip and a blacked out one for that. I got the knife in the gray version because this was the one that was available. So I don't care about the pocket clip. This is never going to be an EDC knife. This is going to be for me a test knife. But just by doing this, I know what to expect. Now I'm going to have to sharpen it, reduce the edge angle. I know what the axis locks can take. And other than that, I think this is just a great knife. I can't wait to sharpen it and to see how it does in hand with repeated cutting of harder materials. Now, the jimping here does not bother me. This one has a larger blade, and still this jimping is done very well. So the rat jimping is done much better than the Spyderco jimping, in my opinion. That all depends on your hands. I would say this is a very good deal. And now I'm actually, just like I said, minutes after seeing how this one felt, moved, and feeling how it was in my hand, I thought I should get myself a rad too. G10 handle scales. Some carbon fiber handle scales are very well made. The Spyderco Sage 1, the Enzo Burke 75. They're both made in the same factory in Taiwan, Taichung, I think. Assembled where they made, I don't know. But personally, I prefer the G10 in this case. This one has a good feeling, and this one, even though it's not G10, still has a better feeling than when I had the carbon fiber handled version of the Rat 2. So yeah, I was hoping to keep this under 10 minutes, but apparently I cannot do that. I get too many thoughts in my head, and I'm distracted from way too many things. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, down in the comment section, I'll try to get them as soon as possible. Check the description for possibly more details or other stuff. Hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I wish you all a great day.